Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Chasing Giants podcast. As we explained last week, this episode was filmed live in Mount Hope, Ohio, in front of about 900 or 1,000 folks that were raising money for Lester's Feet Foundation. We want to thank the folks at JB's Feed and Supply, who is a real-world dealer in Ohio, for having us up there, all the people who attended, and most importantly, the generosity of those of you who donated to Lester's Feet. Now, we had a little bit of a problem. Unfortunately, Don got sick again. He's got the flu, I think some influenza B or something like that, but keep him in your prayers. He's feeling really, really rough. So at the last minute, we scrambled and modified this podcast unlike anything you've ever seen. We got some friends of ours up on stage, and the questions that were asked, we actually had some of Don's closest friends answer them 180-degree opposite of what Don would answer. So you'll enjoy some of these comments, and everybody got a bunch of laughs. Again, we're very sorry to the folks that came out to see the normal live show that just wasn't able to be filmed due to Don's illness. But we appreciate everyone's patience, and I think we all had a good time. We got to learn a little bit more about the status of Lester's Feet, and we got to raise a lot of money, talk about Jesus. It was a good night. So one thing I want to tell everybody who's watching on YouTube right now, due to us trying to be sensitive in the Amish community, we did not video record this episode. So those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, this is going to go audio only for the entire podcast until we get to the end, which is Wes Delks with this week's Sunday Night Prayer Time. We hope you enjoy it. We're going to take next week off due to our travel schedules. I'll be in Japan. Don's going to be out of town as long as he feels better. And so next week we will not air an episode, and we'll be back in 2 weeks to join you guys for another episode. Thank you much for your support. Enjoy this episode.
You know, the reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
You know, other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast. We are live in Mount Hope, Ohio with a humongous crowd. It's estimated that between 900 and 1,000 people have gathered here in the room tonight to raise money for Lester's Feet and listen to the Chasing Giants podcast brought to you by Osseo Gear. Unfortunately, a curveball happened with Don being down again. He's just suffered so much illness over these last few months, but he's been down with a fever for about the last 3 days and is completely horizontal. We were going to try to get him virtually tonight just for a couple minutes to give you guys his best and apologize for not being here, but literally the guy can't get out of bed. So keep him in your prayers. We're going to make the most out of this huge crowd with questions and a couple surprises as we go through the night. But I got a question here. I know in crowds like this, everybody's a little nervous about clapping or raising their hands or doing anything interactive. But we got to remember that Don's sick in bed. And over the next couple days, he's going to listen to this podcast. And I think it would be really cool to do something that he's going to hear. So I know you guys don't like doing this, but let's raise your hand in this room right now if you listen to the podcast at least like every other or every 3 weeks. Raise your hand so I can see how many people actively listen to it. Okay, we're probably 2/3 of the room. Raise your hand if you had never heard of the Chasing Giants podcast, don't want to listen to it, and your friend drug you here for brisket tonight. Raise your hand if you do not listen to the pod. Okay, we got a few of you in here. So that's really cool because
Don has always said this part of Ohio has always been so good to him with his businesses and as friends, you guys, your support. So I'm going to ask you to clap if you agree with this statement. Okay, does everybody understand that? I need you to clap if Don Higgins has ever made you rethink anything about you deer hunting on your property. I want you to clap if that's true. Okay. So I saw a bunch of people. Only the guy that's here for the brisket didn't clap. So Don, we all agree that Don has just said something or wrote something or had something on a video that made us rethink it. Doesn't mean we can ever always do everything he says or that we take everything always good, because sometimes we're just that far out in left field that we just can't be, those things can't be done. That's okay. So we got almost the whole crowd that comment or clapped on that. I'm going to ask you another question right now. If you ever listening, talking, or reading about Don Higgins ever made you think about how to be a better person or Christian, clap. That's really cool, because that's what we talked about here earlier today, and that's about using what we have. And I'm so humbled and honored that you guys had us here tonight. I hope that if anything you take away from us is that two idiots can have a podcast show that is underproduced, really bad quality, but yet tries to put the Lord first. And I hope that that's your takeaway. Let's do one more. Clap if Don ever made you want to vote for a Democrat. Silence. That's fantastic. All right. So obviously the show is brought to you by Osseo. We got to update something about Joe Miles. That guy is still at it. He's in South Texas. I talked to him yesterday, and my guess is that he is going to end up with another giant buck on the ground before the season's out. We got some really cool updates from Chasing Giants TV. And we're going to have, guys, a bunch of habitat videos coming out this spring. So not only are we trying to get some content filmed for deer hunts, we got about 6 or 7 in the bag that are going to be hunt videos that get released here as we go into 2025, but we're also going to be producing some weekly content that's hopefully going to help you from everything from soil health to laying out food plots to TSI and managing your habitat. So my fearless buddy and co-pilot Austin Razor just walked up on stage with me. He's not going to talk, and I promised him I wouldn't make him because he gets really embarrassed. But he's going to be feeding me some questions later today. But there's a very special person in the crowd tonight. And he's probably one of, I would guess, one of my dearest friends I ever met just because he listened to the podcast. And talking to these guys, communicating with these guys, him and his brother, is like nothing else I've ever. We even talk about him on the podcast. Ray Miller is going to come up on stage now and help me answer a couple questions. Everybody give him a round of applause. Actually, everybody stand up and give Ray Miller. Stand up, everyone. He's going to come up on stage. Oh, look at here. Ray Miller. You got to come up on stage, buddy. You can't, everybody just stood up for you. You're really not going to come? This is pivotal to the show. You don't have to stay up here the whole time. Make your way up here. Come on. He's a-coming. He's going to kill me for this. All right, so we have the infamous Ray Miller on the stage. Now we have 2 guys on stage that have a face for radio. If you don't know what that joke means, think about it.
I agree.
All right, so we're going to play a little game in the first segment of tonight's podcast where you have to pretend that you're Don,
Okay.
but you have to answer the question exactly 180 degrees different than the way Don would answer it. So you've been to the master classes. He's consulted on, 2 or 3 of your farms?
Yeah.
Okay? So you've spent a lot of time not only walking farms, but with Don. You've been up there and hung out with us. So you have to answer the questions 180 degrees different than the way Don Higgins would answer. You think you can do that?
I'll try.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask one here that hits very close to home for you.
First, I got a question.
Okay.
Why is there just 2 of us here? Everybody walked out.
And there's still like 950 people in here, man.
Oh.
Give him a round of applause. Come on.
They'll be headed out soon.
He's taking one for the team. I told him that he might get Don to do a free consultation on his new Illinois farm, but I don't want to promise that. I'll get fired. So,
Come on, Don, you can do it.
This is a very controversial topic, and I wanted to lead out with the mini corn cobs on the buffet at Yoder's, but I'm not going to do that. Why do they make those things? Who's going to eat a mini corn cob anyway?
I'm not sure. Probably.
But I know you're passionate about this. But you're going to be forced, Ray, to answer 180 degrees from the way Don Higgins would answer this, not your personal opinion. Got it?
Okay.
What is the biggest threat to the deer hunting industry today? Is it technology or ethics, including IEE? Oh, that's not a word. IE, not IEE. Drones. Oh, I'm going to get him fired up. You're going to see a Higgins rant. No, you got to answer 180 degrees. Which is more alarming to the deer hunting industry, ethics or technology? Ray Miller acting as Don Higgins.
But opposite.
Yeah, you got to answer opposite of what he would. Neither one of them's a concern for you?
No.
Everybody's a class act?
Everybody's a class act. Everybody just minds their own business. And
hunts the middle of their properties?
Everybody hunts the middle of the properties. There's nobody on the property line. Ohio, they have no corn piles. The drones, there's no issue with drones. The deer recovery, those guys are horrible. I still got to be opposite here, right? Terry Pear's a jerk.
Wait, you still got to be opposite. Quit.
Oh, okay,
you said that
okay.
before.
I forgot I was
you
being
said
opposite.
that before. Why are you telling the truth now?
I forgot. Had a weak moment.
Come on. You got to play right here. Now, in all seriousness, I think you would agree when I say this. That's kind of funny to have to answer opposite of Don. But I don't think technology is a bad thing. But technology in the hands of unethical people, I think, is the biggest concern that I would guess that our audience, because we can go back to everybody in the room having to shoot a longbow. Who would like that? Not me. I mean, don't get me wrong. When it's -5 outside, I like hunting in a 360 blind with my boots off in the heater, running to warm my feet. That's a nice thing. So I don't know that I want to go along the lines of saying that technology is necessarily a bad thing. I think that there's going to be a period of time in the future to where it goes too far.
Right.
But anytime, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a longbow or a compound bow or a crossbow. Unethical people are going to do bad things, and unfortunately, they ruin it for everybody. Right. And I know the drone situation has been a big concern for you. If I had to voice a concern, I think drones are probably the most single-handed tool that could be used in a negative way in the industry right now. But the problem is they can have such good out there if used properly. But yeah, the guys are going to always push the limits, and there's always a few bad eggs that make it completely bad for everybody else. All right, you ready to play this game again? Question number 2.
I'll give it a shot.
Ray Miller acting as Don Higgins, except he has to say the opposite. What is the best way to age a buck on the hoof if you have no previous history of him?
What is the best way to age a buck on the hoof? Picture or live? On hoof.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're talking trail camera pictures here.
Well, if he's a tiny deer, he's an old deer.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Is that because old deer shrink?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
So as a deer gets older, he starts shrinking and getting a little bit smaller.
Right.
Start hunched over.
Just like people. I mean, we're a little different.
We need to get old. We need to
middle-aged.
get old really quick.
Right.
We got two big boys sitting up here on the stage. We've eaten too many of the mini corn cobs on the salad bar.
It's like the one guy said about the hair. He says, your hair on top of your head, the roots are fastened to your belly button.
Really?
So further out this goes,
It
the hair
sucks
go
your
down.
hair in?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. I'm pretty light up top anymore.
Why do you think I wear a hat?
Yeah, I see you got a hat on.
Yeah, the only thing that's backing up faster than the garbage truck is my hairline. So, yeah, I think that there's a theory out there that, I've said it before on the podcast joking around that the distance between how's a family-friendly way of saying this? The king buck. The king buck folks actually happened in this room. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but when we talk about the king buck and we poke around at that and laugh about that, that was actually right here where we're sitting, and Don was sitting about where the guy in the flannel shirt there with the black beard is, in the front row of those bleachers, and he made it about 6 minutes until his face was so red he walked back out the door. But that was actually right here. It was a great time. But so if we take a picture of the back of a buck and we set our trail cameras up properly, it's similar like what you said. Yeah. The older you get, the distance between the butthole and the bottom of the giblies gets longer as they start sagging. So you have to scale your trail camera picture and know how far away it is. So the older the buck, the farther down they hang.
Well, how does that work if the buck shrinks as he gets older?
Well, he shrinks, but the distance gets more. Like,
okay. Okay.
In all seriousness, I think what we can all gather is it's really easy to find a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but once a buck gets 4, there's really no way of knowing once they get. I mean, there's guys that are our size and guys that are Austin's size. Yeah. You'll be able to tell a buck's mature, but these guys that get on social media or send and say, is this a 6 or a 7-year-old? Is this a 5 or a 6-year-old? Yeah. I think that that's probably somebody that's trying to get a bunch of likes and comments on social media versus coming up with a true solution for it. Oh, boy. This is very pivotal for you. Is what do you think of solar farms that are run by China? As Trump says, China.
I still got to be Don 180.
Yeah, you got to be Don 180.
Okay. Oh, these solar fields, they're just awesome for our farmland. And China, they're an awesome neighbor. And, these drones floating around. The country, they're awesome. They're awesome, and then we shoot them down after they go across the country. Yeah. It's kind of like sacking the quarterback after the whistle.
You get a flag for that, though. Unless you're a Chiefs fan, you get a flag for everything if you're a Chiefs fan. Let's just face it, or if you're a Chiefs team. So I hope Chris Yates is listening to this one, our sponsor from Victory Chevrolet. He's those Chiefs. It's I saw a picture the other day of the Chiefs have a new uniform, and it's got them in a referee jersey. So I thought that was kind of funny. All right, so the solar field thing. I don't know if you all see this around here in Northeast Ohio. Do you all see solar fields much? We got a little bit of them in Kentucky. So what's happening out in, let's say, Illinois, Indiana, is you have these big black dirt sections. That's just a huge, big, long field. You could have it 700-800 acres. And they're selling it due to government subsidy and putting a solar field in there. And my problem with it is you got to power the world, I get that, and you got to feed the world. But they don't want to go out into the rocks of Missouri or the desert of Nevada and put these things. They want to take good black dirt tillable ground And there's so much government corruption and subsidies that are being thrown out there to buy this land that it's really making it almost impossible for, say, somebody like us that might want a farm to homestead on or to have a recreational property. Those prices of the solar fields are raising the cost of the acre up because they want them to sell their family farms. So these family farms get into financial trouble where they're not making a whole lot of money. They sell out, but they can't sell out to somebody like us. They sell out to some big corporation that's on the take of the politicians. And next thing you know, China owns 2/3 of the country. So
yeah, we actually had on one of our farms, which is Northeast Ohio, we got a whole bunch of offers for the one 30-acre field or whatever. Ridiculous offers. But in that area, it is the cloudiest area in the country, and they want to put solar in. How smart is that?
in east and northeast, it's going to be covered in snow half the year, and
Yep.
the sun never shines the other time of the year.
With the lake and everything, it's really cloudy there.
I spent a lot of time in northern Ohio over the years with my job, and I don't know that I've worn sunglasses one time up here.
Yeah.
I really
I
don't.
got a question for you though.
Okay, what's your
Terry,
question?
Got a question.
Shoot.
Why is
You're a natural at this. Why were you so hesitant in coming up here, by the way?
Well, there's 900 people here looking at me. I never had 900 people looking at me before.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting next to you.
Yeah, why not? What's your question? I interrupted you, sorry.
Why is central and southern Ohio where all the big deer come from in Ohio?
Oh, boy. What he's doing there, folks, is he's telling you not to hunt northeastern Ohio. Just like when the sponsors got up here and talked about, oh, the big bucks in Illinois. Folks, I'm telling you, all the big bucks are here. Don't come to Illinois. I'm just kidding you. In all reality, big bucks are where your neighbors aren't shooting the 3-year-olds that could be 155. If we want to really strip it down, you can have a big buck anywhere if you're not high grading and killing the, let's put the analogy out there, is the 6'3" 7th grader that you want on playing on your basketball team. You know, we identify age structure across a group of bucks that come across our farm, and we see these 3-year-olds that are the buck of a lifetime for somebody, and that's great. But if you consistently are only killing the 3-year-old, that's the future giant 2 years in a row. So when your neighbors aren't on the same page, that could be in Iowa, that could be in Kansas, that can be in Illinois. We stand behind it. The most important thing about a property and developing a property is your neighbors, not that. So that could be in southeast Ohio, or it can be next door to your place in northeast Ohio.
Yep, right situation.
All right, this will be a fun one, and I'll let you decide. No, let's do it the same way. You got to answer, and I'm going to ask you the question like you're Don. Hey, Don, why don't you like hunting out of tree saddles?
I'm still Don 180.
What's the reason you don't like hunting or won't hunt out of a tree saddle? Proxy Don, a.k.a. Ray Miller. Are you still dealing with wedgies? Is it a wedgie? Is it a wedgie problem?
No, they take out wedgies. And they don't make them big enough for me.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, the tree saddle thing, it was a dumb joke that we said very early in the podcast that just stuck, almost like Little Debbie's. And I'm actually, I get hurt so much. I mean, literally, I'm in urgent care like every 3 months. It's like we have supplemental insurance as a revenue stream, if people know what that is, okay? So I'm scared of tethering up to something and hanging from anything. I would be upside down with it wrapped around my neck, and I know people who practice and do it. It's a great way to be mobile, but man, I'm too old, too fat, and too uncoordinated to even try it. And, the other thing that you look at with Don, even though he hunts public land, he pretty much sets up his farms to where he knows where that stand is all times. He doesn't have to be mobile and go do that. But that's a really good question. I'm glad. Would Donald? Oh wow, this is. You don't have to answer this one opposite. This is just us hypothetically, our opinion on this. Would Don let Donald Trump shoot his 2025 target buck? If Donald Trump called and said, I want to come hunt the Trump-Higgins 2025 roadshow, would Don let Donald Trump come to his farm and shoot his target buck? Do you think he would?
I think he would.
I bet he would, too.
You got it.
There's no doubt about it.
He better invite me, though, too.
That would be a wild live podcast. Don Higgins and Donald Trump. All we'd need is Joe Rogan, and we'd have a party that night. Yeah, I think that at this point in Don's career, that would be more than another gigantuous target buck. I think it would.
Yeah. Yep.
We have a lot of famous people that listen to this podcast. I really hope that doesn't get back to him because maybe it should.
I just had a thought.
What's up?
With me coming up here on this stage, I think I should shoot his 25 target buck. What do you think?
I'm going to answer the question opposite of what Don would.
Oh,
sure.
Oh, boy.
You know, I spent a lot of time hunting Don's farm and the adjacent property of Don's farm, and I can honestly tell you it's the only place in the world that I ever just sit there and say, look, there goes another booner that I can't pick my bow up and try to shoot. Oh, look, there goes another booner. It is a special, special place that he's worked his tail off of, and I'm happy for him. And the cool part about it is he's making it now to where it's going to be a legacy for his family. And I think, even like what we were talking about, with our farms, whether it's yours in here in Ohio, I know how much family, you get to take there. The joy of having a resource, because we've all worked very hard, to provide for our families and have an income. But when you can turn that around and it bring joy to your family with your kids, there's nothing better. And Don's actually living that. He had 2 daughters,
right,
and neither one of them, Andrea has hunted some, but his other daughter doesn't. And to see his grandkids, and especially one of them, just so into it and so involved, it's nice to see him light up a little bit about the next generation of his family taking over his farm. So
yeah, built that thing from nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, really, if you think about it.
So I'm going to take and make a quick announcement. We talked about this on the podcast in front of the room before we started recording, but for the folks that are listening, either on YouTube or our audio channels, Jay Gingrich from Gingrich Tree Farms, and also Andy the Apple Guy is here and answering a bunch of questions to those folks. But we got something really cool for those in northeastern Ohio. Our sponsor of tonight and the person that put this on, JB's Feed and Supply, they are doing March orders for Gingrich trees. So if you order in March, they're going to put them all on one truckload and bring them to JB's Feed and Supply on April 5th. So all of you guys that are listening on the podcast right now that are worried about shipping these trees and them not being damaged and all of that kind of stuff, know to contact JB's Feed and Supply. Order your Gingrich trees in the month of March, and they'll ship them here on one truck for a pickup on Saturday, April 5th. So it's kind of cool to see some of the Chasing Giants sponsors here tonight. We got a G5 drill over there. We got a bunch of real world stuff all over the place. Whitetail Life magazine's here. And a bunch of our other friends from the industry are here. It's been a pretty cool night, so we're very thankful for those guys. All right, Ray, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on this one. You can answer as Don would or how you think. Is what age does a buck usually make its largest jump in antler growth? You got to disclose if you're telling the real way or the wrong way on this one.
I'll go with the real way.
The real way? Okay, we get a real Ray Miller opinion this time.
Oh, boy. It's scary.
On the record.
On the record. I would probably say 3 to 4. But they're all different, really.
Yeah, I think that if we try to say always or never, we're always in a. I look at the buck that I shot this year. For those of you who don't know, he was a 4-year-old. He scored 167, and he probably put on almost 40 inches of antler in 1 year. from 3 to 4. And we had one of the best growing seasons we've ever seen, but we've also seen where deer just flat out fell on their face from 3 to 4 that then blew up. There's been a couple deer that Donna shot that they just kick in and go. I think that here's the nutshell, folks. People listen to this podcast and take us so literally and so granularly. I'm going to try to back out one thing and challenge you to do. Instead of worrying about is a deer going to blow up from 3 to 4, as you're all looking at your trail camera pictures, I talk to consulting clients about this, is look at the deer and the genetics that they have as a 3-year-old and start thinking about what has potential to do something crazy. So that 4-year-old that I shot, everybody says, why would you shoot a 4-year-old that's 167 inches? Well, think about the other deer, Smokey, Mel, Zychaeus, that were on Don's farm, and you have these humongous wide frames, long beams, 19 to 22 inches inside. The buck that I shot had a 17-inch spread with 19-inch beams.
Wow.
Okay, so he was really heavy. He was really tight, and he had short beams. For that deer to get elite to the level Don would ever want to hunt him, he would have to put on like 30 inches of non-typical antler, which at that point in time, he might grow kickers and whatnot. But to take a deer with that kind of frame and turn him into a 190 plus probably isn't going to happen, right? So as we're looking at trail cameras and identifying different bucks that we want to maybe say, don't worry about passing or do we shoot him, start looking at the ones that are 3 and 4 and saying, hey, does that deer have a split G2? Does that deer have 4 points coming off of his brow tines where he could get something real funky? And if me personally, if I'm managing my farm or giving advice to somebody, I'll tell them to kill every other buck except for that one.
Right.
That's the one that's got something special to give. When you got these other bucks that are really tight, so I guess the long way of saying it is don't worry about 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Focus more on what bucks do you have on your property that could be special. And what I mean by that's tall brows, tall tines, spread. To get a world-class buck, you got to have it all.
Right.
You can't have a 19-inch spread or a 17-inch spread with 19-inch beams and get, he would have to be really, really tall. It'd have to be like a Trump wall on top of his head. To get up that high.
How many points did that deer have?
I guess scoreable would be 11.
He went like 169 or something?
The buck I shot, 167.
Yeah. Wow, and he only had 19-inch
19-inch beams. So one was 19, one was 19 3/4, with only a 17-inch spread. So, mass helps a ton.
Right.
Tines helps a ton, but short beams and no spread, you can't make up a lot of ground when you do it. But very cool buck.
You think Don had something to do with he wanted that thing out of there?
Absolutely.
For the breeding? Or
well, it's identifying the weakest deer in that age class. So out of the 4-year-olds on his farm,
this was the weakest.
So we took out. So where else are you going to shoot a 167-inch cull buck? Let's just face it. It's not going to happen, right? How many of you raise your hand if you'd be willing to go hunt a 167-inch cull buck? Yep, all of them. Actually, start clapping for Don right now. Clap if you would be willing to do that. He's going to be laughing when he listens to this. But, so it's just a matter of, on a normal year, or just say look at a year, if there wasn't 4-year-olds that had genetic, where he identified something. So it might not be that the buck is bigger.
Right.
There could be another 160 there that's a 4-year-old, but he might show something that might be special, spread, beam length, non-typical stuff, something that's got a potential. So I think because we talk about these little nuggets, sometimes we get too honed in on just that little nugget. I don't think it's much about worrying when the buck's going to make a big jump. It's identifying the bucks that you think might have the potential.
Right.
And then whack and stack the rest of them.
Right. Well, that's one of the toughest part for Aiden and I is identifying the bucks that need to come out and then having enough confidence to get rid of them. Because we were always kind of shooting to just get all of them older. But obviously Don likes it, cull them early.
You want to answer a question? I got a good one for you. Yeah. You'd be willing to answer a question? All right. So I said that I wasn't going to ask him to talk, but this one's really cool. So This is how proud I am. This is Austin Razor, and he's extremely embarrassed right now, so I won't get you to clap for him. But this guy had Don consult on his farm how many years ago? 4 years ago. And it's just getting to the point it's turning the corner. And you know what this guy did? He invited a guy in a wheelchair from North Carolina to come up and hunt before he even went and shot a target. He worked his tail off. He put a wheelchair accessible blind on a gooseneck behind Miscanthus so they could roll this guy up into an elevated blind overlooking the food plot. And he basically completely walked away from anything of his aspirations after paying 4 years after having Don in. And this farm is turning the corner to let this kid with a wheelchair. And the question, Austin, is dealing with and you just shot a buck 2 nights ago?
Yep.
2 nights ago. So after the young man in the wheelchair, he didn't close the deal. Austin had one of the bucks he was wanting to get shot off the farm. It didn't come out. He was hunting, trying to kill a doe, and all of a sudden this buck shows up, and he ended up being able to shoot it. Emotions of hunting. You've dealt this year with the stress and anxiety of trying to get this guy a deer, which is tough. When you guys know that when you're trying to bring somebody in and have them hunt on your farm, that's stressful. And then the highs of being able to kill a buck that you've worked so hard for 4. What's the highs and lows you've seen in hunting this year with those 2 experiences?
So this year, I don't know, it was kind of bittersweet finally killing a deer at the end of the year, because I'd put everything into trying to get my new friend Cody Orr from North Carolina, and he's just a phenomenal human. And when he was 15, he dove into a lake, and he was just playing around like all of us do, and he ended up paralyzed from like the bottom rib down, and he's just like super positive, everything that all of us would want to be if we were in that situation, and he just lives it out every day. And 4 years ago, I convinced my wife that we should have Dawn out to our property, because I kind of had this dream, and it took some selling to get her convinced that it was a great idea. And finally, she warmed up to it, and we had Dawn out, and it was just a process. He stood in the middle of it and said, "Hey, all these trees need to come down, Austin. You're going to have to buy a dozer and knock all these trees down." And I had to convince her that that was a great idea also, that we needed to spend the money on it. And
while he's living in a camper in the barn, he hadn't even built his house yet, folks. This is how patient his wife was.
She's a saint, and hopefully she listens to this. But yeah, so we were still living in a camper. House was not even under roof, and we have Dawn out. And that was the start of it. That was the start of the process. And we just, plant this and do this and change everything. And the property was just progressing, and, nothing was immediate. And you have to wait for the miscanthus to grow, wait for everything to grow. And then, it was finally the time. The property matured, and it was time to have Cody out. And I talked to Cody. I said, "Hey, I would love to have you out, but you're going to have to help me with this. I've never been in a wheelchair, and I don't know how to set this up. I need to help with measurements. Can you teach me what I need to do on this property?" And he walked me through it, built a blind, got everything set up, and we had him out earlier in the season. We saw a bunch of deer, and the buck just didn't cooperate. And after putting that into it, I was like, okay, cool. We still have late season. These deer it's going to be cold. Everything's going to be fine. So I put out food for him. We've got the feeders, got everything set up, and he drove all the way back from North Carolina after the snow and in the cold, and we sat for 2 evening hunts with this last cold that we just had, and everything was perfect. And we sat for 2 nights, and the only thing we saw was a coyote. One coyote. And so I was just, apologetic, and it was so tough, because all I wanted was him to get this deer. And then he leaves, they go home, and about a week later, I got out there, and was going to try to shoot a doe. And sure enough, this buck comes in, ended up shooting the deer a couple nights ago, and we went out and found it the next morning. And one of my buddies came up and helped me with it, and it was amazing to be able to share that experience with my buddy, being there with me with the deer. And it meant a bunch to both of us, but then it was also knowing that I was going to have to call Cody and tell him that I shot that deer that we had talked about all year and the year before that he was going to come out and shoot. So it was just, you go from the highest of high to, hey, I'm going to call him before I'm going to send him this picture, because I don't want to send him that picture because I wanted him to be behind it. And it was just, it was super tough, but it's also, the best part about it is, as soon as I called him, I said, hey, buddy, I'm sad to say I shot this deer, but you're coming back next year and we're going to try to get one bigger, because that's the whole point. This was kind of a bully buck that was pushing everything off, and we're just hoping that we'll bring him back next year and see if we can get one bigger. But it's definitely a roller coaster.
I think that and you need to become a preacher, dude. That was awesome. He just threw up a little bit in his mouth, I won't lie. And he's probably going to hit me when I'm asleep at night tonight, because he's sharing a hotel room with me, so he'll probably beat me with a pillow with a bar of soap in it or something. Folks, that's what's called good things happen to good people. And like what we talked about earlier, I can't be more proud of that young man. And it makes me want to help him more. That's why as his businesses have started to grow, and I can get behind people like that. What do you all say? Can you all get behind just whoever it is? When you all see a guy like that that's putting others first, you want to do business with him. You want to support him. You all show that in your all's businesses every day. Other people's going to want to do that for you. And I think that's the circle of what we've seen so much come alive in the outdoor industry. So we're going to answer one more question, and then we're actually going to do a live auction. So the folks that are getting ready to do that, you can kind of make your way up and get staged up for the live auction to support Lester's Feet here in just a second. And let's go back to answering one completely opposite, Ray. And that was, what do we do with hunters that pile corn and put tree stands on the property lines? What should we do if we're answering 180 degrees from what Don Higgins would say?
Well, if there's fences on that line, I would take them down. I would invite them over for dinner.
Give them all your trail camera pictures?
I wouldn't punch them. Yeah,
we got to give them all of our trail camera pictures in sheds.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you guys have much of that problem?
We sure do.
Yeah, I think it's become the name of the game. It's how to manage your neighbors as much as how to learn how to hunt. And, I got a lot of hate mail last week for me blistering someone who wrote a question that I didn't take too well when I was taking up for Don, and it's about woodsmanship. And we're going to talk a little bit about woodsmanship when we come back after the live auction. But, folks, there's a difference between managing woodsmanship and learning the what the deer are doing and then taking a really big breath and not just absolutely getting in a knockdown drag out with your neighbor because of what was the deer pimp? Was that the one episode where Don went off about pimps?
Yeah, right.
But in all reality, it's so sensitive of a subject because we spend so much time and so much money with this sport, no matter what it is, that it's like that emotion gets us fired up really, really quick. But I'm telling everybody in this room right now, there's not one friendship, one relationship, or one conversation about Jesus that's worth losing because of an animal like a whitetail being on your wall. So I encourage you to do that. All right, so we're going to stage up. I'm going to introduce our auction for a little bit. So 100%, all of this stuff that's in the auction that we're getting ready to raffle or auction off was donated. So 100% of this goes to Lester's Feet. If you write a check for your winning bid, it will go to Lester's Feet. So we're going to Austin and his family at Coonless Deer Feeders right over here. I've been involved with the design of this from the very beginning, since we were actually together when the idea came about, actually. And I have number 2 prototype on my farm, and it's just worked flawlessly. I mean, when you look at all of the aspects of it being able to ship in a flat box, which is sitting right behind it, and keeping those deer away from legs of a feeder, to having a sight gauge to be able to know when it's empty from a trail camera, but most importantly, raccoons can't get in the thing. So 2 or 3 fills of corn in this feeder will pay for itself if you're using a high quality feed. But we're going to raffle one of these off. You will take it home today. If you can't haul it, it'll be left with JB's. Austin's family, the owners of Coonless, have donated this. And in addition, we're giving you the first fill. 1,000 pounds of NutriCrave corn will be available for your first fill up of the Coonless feeder. And if you can't take that home with you tonight, it will be at JB's to arrange it. So I'm going to ask my good friend Grant Nicodemus. You talk about the hunting industry being a small world. I first met his family actually in manufacturing and got to know them really well. Don has consulted on their family's properties. The GBs never get a shout out on the podcast. We're always talking about the Amish and Mennonites. And, we don't give a shout out to the GBs out there, but but I want to personally thank Grant and his family. They've been such good supporters and friends of Don and I for many, many years. Their heart is like no other that I've seen. They don't want it talked about, but how much they do for their community, for others in the kingdom. It's an honor and a privilege. He actually called me and said, "Hey, I'm coming up. Is there anything I can do? Can we auction something off?" And we found something to auction off. So, again, using your talents, your passion for something for the greater good, we really appreciate it. Grant Nicodemus, make sure everybody knows that name. You got big things ahead of you. You're a young man.
I'm going to keep it down here so I can hear the ring guys. Guys, is everybody having fun tonight? Give Terry Peer a round of applause for doing all this on the fly. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, absolutely. And the other big guy up there. Well, guys, we're here to raise some money, and Terry's already introduced what we're going to be selling and what the money's going for. Guys, you're not here tonight to get a deal. Terry already mentioned that, but you're here tonight to support some family, who knows where it could be, down in North Carolina, dealing with flooding, whatever, but the money is all going 100% to Lester's Feet. And so what we're selling, again, we're selling the Coonless Deer Feeder. This is donated. One more round of applause for Austin Razor for donating this item. Austin, thank you. Thank you. How many of you all have been to an auction? Raise your hand. All right, that's a good amount. We're in Mount Hope, Ohio, so that makes sense. Guys, we're going to let you all play. We don't have buyer's numbers tonight, so I've got Sarge Kime up here, Stephen Yoder up here, and the winning bidder will write the check tonight, but they'll get your name, and we'll announce the name, and we'll write that down. Then you can take care of the check with Terry. So, guys, we're going to have an auction. You're getting the Coonless Deer Feeder. You're getting 1,000 pounds of corn, NutriCrave corn, and somebody can just give $5,000. Give $5,000. Give $500. Give two. Hit 200 out of 2, 300, 400. We're gonna get 4, 5, 600. What 600, 7, we're gonna get $1,000 on her. 1,000, 1,200, 1,500. What 1,200, and 1,500, and 1,500. You got a bum here, 1,200, 1,500, $1,700 here. And now 2,000. Better get two. Out of 2, 2,200. 22. Stephen, get him in. $2,200. $2,000 bid, 21, $2,100, you better bum here, $2,100 here. I got Sarge Kime on 2,000, give 21, $2,100, but you better back 2,100, $2,000, better get 21, 2,100, I get it. Guys, you're writing the check to Lester's feet. Don't think about what you're getting. Think about what you're giving. $2,000 is bid. 2,100. $2,000. I better get 21. Hit 2,000. I better get 21. Oh, in. Hold on. I'm at 2,000. I better get 2,100. 2,100. I gotta go and die. Sold it. $2,000. Put your hands together. Thank you. $2,000.
Got a name, Sarge? Thank you, Grant. Thank you for the difference that's going to make in everybody's lives. John Ritter. Thank you very much, sir. Before you guys leave tonight, walk over to the Lester's Feet table and just glance down. 4 of the most recent families that we've helped wrote thank you cards. And just scan those things real quick. When you hear a mother or read where a mother said, we were going to lose our house if you guys didn't randomly call us and say we want to help. That puts in perspective a whole lot more than just getting a deer feeder at a shindig in Mount Hope, Ohio tonight. So before you guys leave, stop by the Lester's Feet booth and just take a quick glance at the pictures and the thank you cards on that.
Ever had a terrible real estate experience? Average realtors usually spend more time selling themselves than on selling your land. They'll tell you anything to get the listing. They know that if they get the listing, you're stuck with them. Not here. Midwest Land Group has changed the way land is sold and is the only brokerage to offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That means if we don't meet your expectations, you can fire us. That puts all the pressure on us to perform. We don't just list land, we sell it. If you're looking to buy or sell property, don't before you talk to us. Visit us at MidwestLandGroup.com.
All right. Would Don rather go hunting with Joe Biden or Hunter Biden? What would you say, Ray? You can answer this one honestly, because
honestly,
he wouldn't go hunting.
he wouldn't go. I mean, here's a funny story. You know, everybody thinks that there's this battle or this bad blood between Tony LaPratte and Don, and there's really not. They really respect each other. And a couple years ago at Shipshewana, I guess it was 3 years ago, they had this great debate between Tony and Don. And we're in a room like this with, I don't know, there's 1,500 people, I think, in the room. And we're up here, me and Don were up on the stage talking, and I look over, and Tony walks in. And I'm like, Tony, come on up here. We got a question for you. And I forget how it worded. It was about Hillary, though. Yeah,
and
I was there.
And somebody had asked Don, would you take Hillary hunting? He's like, no way, I wouldn't take it. Tony stepped up and goes, I'm the man for the job. He's like, send her with me. We're going to call this thing out real quick. So read between the lines on that. It was one of the most classic stories of Don Higgins and Tony LaPratte ever.
Didn't he say something about the alpha doe?
He will take out the alpha doe.
I think he did.
I think he did. All right, this is actually, Ray, I want your opinion on this, because you being in Ohio and doing supplemental feed, I think there's a big misconception out there that mature bucks won't eat out of feeders. Have you ever noticed this, or have you seen it get better the longer you put feed out? What's your and Aiden's kind of perspective about older bucks sticking their nose in a feeder?
Well, in my opinion, it probably comes down to how long they were exposed to that feeder. Like if we have a farm that we've been feeding for many years, we don't see a difference. We'll do it. But if we go get a lease somewhere and we pop in feeders, yeah, they can be a little skeptical on that piece. But if they're exposed to it, you know, if you feed
grow up around it.
Yep. If they grow up around it and you feed all year long, they'll get used to it.
I think that the guys that are weekend warriors that come out and, throw a feeder up 2 weeks before deer season are the ones that are like that. And, changing a buck's behavior after he's already mature is impossible. Yeah, I don't think you can do it. No. I don't think you can, keep him from going where he wants to go or doing what he wants to do. What we want to do as land managers, folks, is we want to build the future for 3 and 4 years from now. So those buck fawns that maybe we can shoot that doe that has buck fawns so that those buck fawns stay on the property, or the 2-year-olds that are there, we want them to grow used to whatever we're doing on the property. Lee and Tiffany even talk about this out in Iowa, is that the consistency in how you feed is really important. They've done a lot of videos and stuff out there where they basically say, when the deer knows you're there, whether you know the deer's there, they pattern you before you pattern them. And when the deer relate you to something positive, meaning bringing food, bringing mineral, and you do that consistently, what you just don't want to do is step on one, go tromping through the woods. Or so, Brandon Epperson also had a video that we released in October for a big non-typical buck that he shot in Kentucky on Chasing Giants TV. We played it earlier today, had a huge flyer coming off the back. And, he fed there, but he did it the same time, same day of the week, and that consistency to where that buck knew he was there. By the time he got out, he was eating fine out of it, and actually used it for his entry to go into hunt that day. Let's do a little bit of a controversial question here, Ray. Uh-oh. Since I've had you up here longer than I promised, but you're doing such a phenomenal job. We might need to take this on the road somewhere else. By the way, what do you think?
There's only 5 people left.
Yeah, everybody's. Well, the ice cream got taken down. We had ice cream tonight, so yeah, everybody's disappointed there's no ice cream. We had one of the groups that are here with a booth at the show was this supplemental feeding and baiting conversation in the state of Ohio. I think is on everybody's mind, and I think everybody in a group like this will either refrain from speaking up or maybe be a little hesitant and saying that they don't agree with it because they go home and throw out a bag of corn at night.
Right.
But in all reality, in a perfect world, you being an Ohio resident and could basically make your wish list of what you want the regulations around supplemental feeding or baiting, what would you do as a resident who lives here, that invests in the property, that invests in Don coming out? What's your wish list, and then what are you kind of forced into doing?
Probably supplemental feeding out of the season is probably the biggest thing. I think if we take away baiting, it would even help the guys with smaller acreage because there'd be more mature bucks on the landscape. I know right now they probably feel that without a bait pile they wouldn't have a chance, but I think it would change because you have more deer on the landscape.
Yeah. And I never want to make a suggestion about regulation because of the pessimistic attitude that I tend to have. But I got a feeling that even if they passed a law, there's going to be some very unethical people that don't obey the law.
Oh yeah.
And then that creates even more friction. But I don't think you hide behind that to initiate change. I really don't.
Right.
So it's going to continue to be a very interesting conversation moving forward. I'll be surprised if the hunting community in Ohio ever really agrees. This is going to be one of those things that will divide us more than unite us. And but I think Don has said it well. Ohio has so much going for it. And I believe, did I hear right that they're going to do something proposed for non-resident hunters to limit non-resident? That's on the books or being discussed.
Yeah, I think it is.
That could be a big one too.
Yep.
Don Higgins, 2028, make deer hunting great again. Is that a campaign ad?
Looks like it.
Well, should we do a Higgins Delks 2028 shirts next year?
Sure.
Have Wes as his running mate. Does Don use any scent control at all, or simply hunt the wind? it's changed over the years. When I first met Don 20 years ago, he was pretty particular about the chlorophyll tablets and getting dressed out in the field. He doesn't wear his camo to Waffle House, and obviously bathes like a normal person. But as far as the ozonics or the spray downs or anything like that, he does not use any of those products. He goes out and he has a area with all of his hunting equipment that is not in the house and gets dressed and then gets on his quad or his Quiet Cat bike and zips around. But it's always about the wind for Don. He doesn't get into the other stuff. He will if he has a code brown or he has to go to the bathroom, he does it right there. He doesn't worry about it as much as he used to. So this one says, "Hey Don and Terry / Aiden." I wrote that in there automatically because I wanted you to feel included.
Shouldn't he come up here?
No, this isn't. So this says, "Love everything you do for the hunting community. My question is, you say you should mow over your cattle pastures every 3 to 5 years to keep browse better. What if you now have a 3-year-old buck that is claiming this sanctuary? Do I mow it, or what are you going to do?" I guess at one point, did I say you all correct me, did I say that you should mow your cattle pastures down every 3 to 5 years? Did I say that? I don't remember what I said last week.
I've never heard that.
I do mow a section of my grown-up cattle pastures. So if you look at my farm, it was an old dairy farm, and I have what I've nicknamed redneck switchgrass, which is just briars, grasses, cedars, and come up. And I don't have a mulching head or have access to a mulching head. So when the cedars I try to mow it before the cedars get too big I can handle them with a bush hog. Okay? So if I divide my farm basically into 3 areas, I mow one of those areas every year. So I'm not mowing off every single bit of my grown-up pasture in 1 year. So sometime now that I have a cab tractor, I used to have to be really careful of it because of the goldenrod. My allergies are really bad. It's not as bad now. I'll go in and mow, say, an acre of that grown-up cattle pasture just so the cedars don't take. If you look at a cattle pasture, this is one of the most important lessons Don ever taught me. If you go into an area that's grown up cedars, pine trees, thicket, and you look across the floor of the woods and there's grass, you're still okay. The minute that the cedars and the trees and the briars start getting high enough that it chokes out the grass and you can look underneath of it and say from here to Smokey sitting in the 5th or 6th row right there, I can see that far. You've already lost that as a sanctuary and bedding area because there's no grasses. The grasses are the key to where the bucks and the deer are still going to use it as bedding. So think of it that way. If you look into a bedding area and you don't have any grasses growing up in the inside of it, it needs to be cut and just stay ahead of it. But I would never eliminate all bedding on my property at any time. If I was burning switchgrass, we'd burn Don one section of his switchgrass every year and rotate it. I mow mine. So the goal of the DNR from Ohio is to kill more deer. If you take away crossbows and bait piles, I guess boat piles wouldn't make any sense, would it? Bait piles, how are you supposed to control the deer population? I sense a little sarcasm in that question. I think Don is here. Is Don actually here and he's incognito?
Okay, read that again.
So it says the goal of the Ohio DNR is to kill more deer. So they're making a statement assuming that there is corrupt politics and bureaucracy in the state of Ohio. Maybe there's lobbyists that are from the auto industry, insurance companies or whatever that says they want more deer killed. Okay. And they're saying if you take away our crossbows for season-wide archery and you take away our bait piles, how are we supposed to control the deer population? I sense a little sarcasm there. Do you have any comment on that, Ray?
I'm not sure.
All right, we got a couple more, and then we're going to cut this in.
The 180 or the?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean.
What was the funnest buck you've killed and why? Do you want to answer that personally? Do you got like a fun experience and then I'll answer it, but is there something that you look back on your hunting career and like the one you've enjoyed, or you've had a lot of fun, or it was a memorable experience?
I would say probably the deer I killed last year. It was one on the first farm Aiden and I had bought, and we watched him grow up from 3, 4, 5, and I ended up killing him then at 5.
Oh, that's cool. So you put the whole story. Was that the first time that you put a whole year to year to year and targeted that specific buck and closed the deal?
Yeah, pretty much.
Man, that can be a frustrating thing when you start trying to hunt a very specific buck and it's all or nothing. Yep. Man, you got to be wired right for that, because, man, that's that can be the ultimate of highs or the lowest of lows. My answer is actually going to surprise a bunch of people, because it's actually the smallest buck that I have mounted. I think that this buck would probably score around 118.
Okay.
So
I think I know this story.
Yeah?
Something with a junkyard?
It is. It's the junkyard deer. So when I was probably 20 years old, my wife's uncle owns a junkyard for semi-trucks, and so he would scrap out, say, like Coke or Pepsi trucks or beer trucks, and scrap all the aluminum and sell it off. So he had this junkyard up on top of this ridge, and my grandfather had a dump truck that needed a part for the dash, and I'm like, I bet that there's an old, C-Series truck over there. So I called my wife's uncle, and he said, yeah, go up there and check, and he told me where there'd be one at. And we're walking down the aisle of this junkyard, and it's probably September, and I see these humongous doe claws. I mean, it's like I was in Illinois. I mean, these huge hoof prints right through the middle of the junkyard. And I'm like, wow, there's deer in here. I couldn't believe it. So rifle season comes along, and back then, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know what I'm doing now half the time, but I really didn't know what I was doing back then. And I didn't have a deer that I really was excited about. I'm like, I'm going back to that junkyard during rifle season. So I take a lawn chair, a folding umbrella lawn chair, and I go to this. I asked him if I could hunt. He said, yeah. And I walk out the lane, and there is this gorgeous, it's like the lights are shining down from heaven, and there's a rainbow. It was like this perfect setup. Walk out there, and it's literally a Budweiser beer truck wagon, the whole back end of a Budweiser truck. But it's right in the center of the junkyard, had all the roads right in the center, highest point. I'm like, I got to get up there. So I got my 7 mag, and I'm going up there. I climb up on the bumper, climb up on the hood, climb up, and finally and literally I am the biggest redneck you would ever meet in a fold-up lawn chair. Actually, I think it was a red lawn chair of all things. Red umbrella lawn chair on the top of a Budweiser truck with a 7 mag in my orange. And this buck walks out, and he was over my right shoulder, and I throw up, and I mean, I just poured it to it, this buck. And he jumps and he runs into kind of this big mound of old cars and everything. So I called, my wife's uncle wasn't there, so I called my wife's cousin, who was probably 2 years younger than me, and said, hey, I just shot this deer. Is there any way you can help me? Because it was a muddy mess. I couldn't get my truck back here. He comes in, and they have this tracked front-end loader. Looks like one of the biggest bulldozers I've ever seen in my life, but it's got this big loader bucket on. And he just got this big grin on his face, and he drives this big cat track machine back. And I just remember there was this brown Pinto. For some reason, there was a Pinto. He just runs over it like a monster truck, right up over the top of it, over into this brush pile, and literally scoops up like 4 yards of dirt with the deer in it. Pulls it up, rams it back over the Ford Pinto, and goes over. And I had this little 2-wheel drive Dodge Dakota, and I'm trying to follow him all the way up through this mud, and I turn the corner, and he dumps that whole load of dirt, the deer, everything in the back of this little Dodge Dakota. And it was down on the spring overloads the whole way home, and then I had to dig the deer out of the dirty mud to get him checked in. And that's the fun side of the story. A couple short period of time after that, he was killed in a car accident. So if I look back on probably one of the best memories of that whole thing, and one of the things that was kind of a cool story to think about. It's sitting on top of a Budweiser truck like a stupid redneck with a 7 mag killing a 118-inch deer. Of all the deers I've killed, that was one.
You have a picture of that? You sitting on top?
No, I don't. We weren't videoing for Chasing Giants TV back then, thank goodness. That would have been an interesting. It would probably had a lot of hits in Alabama if I would have had that one on video. Oops, just offended all of our Alabama listeners.
Is that the deer you made a Texas heart shot on?
No, that was a different one. I've done it all, stupid man. You wouldn't believe. That was the first buck I ever shot with a bow.
Okay.
I shot too late at night, and I thought he was facing broadside, but he was actually facing straight away with me with his head turned, and I shot him right up the poop chute by accident. I was like only 17 or 18 when I did that. He didn't go far. No. When I found him, there's like a half inch of knock. I was shooting a High Country Supreme back then, and it was like a 32-inch arrow, 25-12. So this thing's like the equivalent of a broomstick nowadays compared to what the arrows are today. And that thing went straight up. He went like 20 yards. It looked like there was a pig that was slaughtered everywhere. All right. Man, here's the thing. We got more questions, but I know you didn't want to do this. And you're going to smack me upside the head when we get done. But this was a tough task for me to try to figure out something to do that was somewhat entertaining without the boss here. And you've been such a loyal and supportive friend, both you and your entire family, not just your brother, but your entire family. I can't thank you enough for braving of coming up here tonight and doing something you have no desire to do. And but man, it was fun. Give him a round of applause. He did good. I'll figure out some way to make it up to you.
I think we got the student trying to teach.
What do you think my job is every week, dude? It's like, anyway. We really wish Don was here.
Yeah.
I know you all came to see him. He's feeling really guilty right now, but we understand that if he can't be here, it was bad. So,
if Don can't come, he's sick.
Yeah. Well, now that you're so good at this, he's going to listen to this and actually think how good Ray did, and he's like, now when he retires, we got a career, man.
Oh boy,
we got a career. What do you think?
You could run a couple stories through about Don. He's not here to defend himself.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Something about a grandma or...
See, but you know that story better than I do. I would mess it up. Yeah, we could pass the mic around for like campfires at church camp and all tell stories about Don's most... How many people have had Don on their property do a land consultant? Raise your hand if you're in the room. Man, that's a lot.
Yes,
he's done a lot in this area. So, see, all of us could come up and actually tell stories about Don on their property. That would be kind of fun. Yep. I guess the funniest thing that I ever saw Don do, him trying to get out of a 360 blind, running across a muddy ag field the day after he had Mexican for dinner the night before. And knowing that he should walk the grass waterway out, but it was longer to get to the house than going straight across the muddy field that had been chisel plowed, and then regretting his decision halfway across this same field.
So he had no cover?
He had no cover. He was in the wide open. Luckily with the right wind from where I was sitting. But yeah, if we would have the video technology today that I had back then, I would have a raise today. Let's just say that he would pay me more than what he does. But he's a special guy. I know he thinks a lot of you all too. So
he's an awesome friend, and it's an honor to be called his friend.
Yep. So we're going to wrap the show up again. Thanks to everybody for being here in Mount Hope. Let's give the folks at JB Feed and Supply a round of applause. You talk about a guy who has dealt with a very stressful situation the last 2 days since we found out that there was a chance Don would be ill. I could hear it in this guy's voice as we talked 3 or 4 times a day on what the plans were going to be. But, man, not only for your business and your support of us, but what you guys stand for. Again, it's people that we want to work with, and just can't thank you enough for your support and putting this together for us tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, I got one more favor.
Uh-oh, what's that?
You asked me for a favor. I'm asking you for
I got a favor now.
You do not air this podcast.
That's not going to happen.
And then you and Don redo one before the weekend.
No, that's not going to happen.
Oh, come on.
I'm not as good a friend as you are. I'll say no.
I can deal with these 900 people.
Oh, he did great, didn't he? He did absolutely fantastic. And you got to answer opposite of what Don would answer. That makes it a little bit easier. You weren't on the spot. You did a fine job. Thanks for your help. We'll see you next week with Chasing Giants. Thanks for your support.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.
Good evening, Chasing Giants family. West Elk's coming at you from a hotel in the middle of Missouri. CRP country, as Don would say, being Cedars, Rocks, and Persimmons. And wanted to share something with you today. In January, actually the first week of January, my wife and I, each year we pick a word for the year. I know some people do that. It's something that we've done for the past 10 years or so, and each year we pick a word. This year we chose the word unhurried, which is a stretch for me, as I am wired as a driven individual. I like to get things done, and unhurried is a good balance for me. There's obviously verses like in Proverbs, go to the ant thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Obviously we're supposed to be hard workers. We're commanded to be hard workers, but there's a balance, and that balance is in being an unhurried person. And Jesus is the perfect example of that. There's a verse or a story in the book of Matthew. Matthew 20 says, 2 blind men were sitting by the road, and when they heard that Jesus was coming by, they shouted out, "Lord, have mercy on us." And the crowds rebuked them and told them to be quiet. But they shouted even louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Jesus stopped, and he called out to them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And this is the perfect example of being unhurried. Was very convicted of that today, as I'm getting ready to go to a consult, and there's somebody in the hotel parking lot this morning that was changing a flat tire. And what did I do? I drove right on past him. And when I did that, I just thought, man, so much for being unhurried this year. And I want to make sure that like Christ, you think of Jesus. I picture the woman at the well. I mean, Jesus is sitting at a well, and the conversation that he had with her, just example after example of the story I just mentioned of he's in a crowd of people, and there's two beggars, 2 blind guys, that he stops and asks them what they need. And I want to make sure that I'm striving to be that kind of person and leading my family to grow in that unhurried lifestyle, because I'm so often not a good example of that. And that's often here in the past few weeks, when I am the most unhurried, is when I have the best conversations with people, the kind of conversations that actually matter. I'm not talking about deer hunting conversations, but conversations about life that actually matter. When we're in a hurry, we can tend to have very surface level conversations and get our business done and keep moving on. But when you are being unhurried, I have found that that's when you have deeper relationships, deeper conversations on things that really matter. And I just want to go to the Lord in prayer for that, for the Chasing Giants listeners. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, the blessings you've given us, and the Chasing Giants family. I pray that we would strive to be unhurried people like Christ, and that this week somebody that would be listening to this would just trust in you with all their heart and lean not on their own understanding, but in all their ways acknowledge you, and in that slowness, peacefulness, unhurriedness of being abiding with the Father, abiding with Christ, that would lead to fruit, and that would lead to conversations that really matter, and things that really matter in life that have an eternal impact. In your Son's name we pray, amen. So, challenge for this week, be an unhurried person.